Thank you for calling Call-In Studios host and call screener line. Please enter your show or meeting.
And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Breaking news, my friends! The Nobel Prize Committee has come out with an early morning announcement that they are renaming the name of the Nobel Peace Prize Award. Its new name it's going to be known as the Marty McFly Award. Now, I mean, I know what you're thinking. This has nothing to do with time travel, my friends, nor does it really have anything to do with science or, frankly, anything to do with peace. Nope. The new Marty McFly Award is going to be given to people who haven't done anything yet, to what hasn't happened yet. And we know that that's the truth because they continue to do it. You know, never mind, they've got a guy that, if he eliminated all war on the face of the planet and got rid of all nuclear weapons at the same time, they wouldn't give him the Nobel Peace Prize Award, which is why they've changed the name of their once venerable award to the Marty McFly Award. It's true, my friends. You know, they've, in an effort to make their award even more irrelevant than it already is, they've decided to start awarding over fictional things. It's true, my friends. You cannot make this stuff up, I'm telling you. Well, welcome to the program, my friends. Cowboy State Politics live on a Friday. I've got, I had one studio dog with me. Oh, yeah, and it's Open Line Friday. That's right, my friends. Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. This is the day where we talk about whatever you want to talk about. You see, normally during the week, even if I have to turn the phone lines on for whatever reason, you kind of have to talk about what I'm interested in. You know, I mean, if you're not on board with the plan for the day during the week, you really don't get to talk all that much at all. But on Friday, totally different story. Everything's different. You kind of run the show, which if you haven't figured this out yet, I put my program under extraordinary risk doing so because you are kind of in charge. Whatever you want to talk about, we will talk about it on today's show. So if you want to be part of the program, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. That's the number to get you right into this studio. And so, yeah, whatever you want to talk about, we'll do it. A couple of program notes. I meant to do this earlier in the week, and I totally forgot. But next week, I will be elk hunting, or attempting to elk hunt. Or, you know, I don't really get all that excited about it, but I will be on the mountain with my rifle and an elk license. That's not to say that I'm going to get out and, you know, tromp around and, you know, go search for one, though I might. You never know. Normally, if I don't happen to be sitting outside and I don't happen to have my gun with me, or I don't happen to look out the window of the cabin and see that there's an elk standing there, it's got a pretty good chance of living. So anyway, next week we will not have any Cowboy State Politics live. I know. I'm sorry I had to do this to you, but I do have to get away. It's a yearly thing with the elder Mr. Iverson, and we go up the mountain for a few days and see if we can kill something on the mountain. So anyway, elk hunting next week. No Cowboy State Politics live, though. We may do it. I may be back on Friday. I'm not sure. But the plan is going forward that we really won't have any Cowboy State Politics live all next week. However, we will have episodes of the podcast, and I'm in the middle of working on those right now, so I'll have stuff for you to listen to throughout the week. Coming tomorrow on the podcast, the story of the Turning Point USA chapter that they wanted to get started at Natrona County. If you'll notice, I really haven't talked about it that much on the program. See, the principal, he said that he doesn't want anything political in his school. And so even though he has a DEI club, a club completely dedicated to celebrating everybody but white people, he has that club, and that one's okay, and that one's not political. But a Turning Point USA chapter that is focused on civics and American pride and conservatism and faith, no, you can't have that on campus. That would be too much. So he said no. And it's turned into a big giant controversy. And tomorrow on the program, on the podcast, I'm going to dive into that and talk about it. There's quite a bit to discuss on that one. And it always happens. It's some little tyrant in a little high school in little Wyoming that has to have control of his fiefdom. And God forbid you have anything that challenges his beliefs whatsoever. And so that's going to be tomorrow on the podcast. And also, I'm still running that contest today. If you want to win a copy of this book, this is the title of the book is Willing to Die. It's a story of my friend Ovi Muntean's father, who got his family out of communist Romania. It's a fascinating read, and parts of it will scare the hell out of you, just to tell you the truth. I mean, there's some pretty terrifying things in here, as well as right in the back of the book, there are the 35 or so things that from the Naked Communist. Goals, that is, that the communists wanted to accomplish in America to turn this into a communist country. You'll notice that most of them we've already done, which should scare the crap out of any of you. And, the book is signed. All of these copies that I'm giving away are signed by Ovi Muntean. So if you want to win a copy of this, just be the first person to send me a message, and all you got to say is, hey, I want one. Or, Dave, send me a book. Or, David, please, I want one of those. Whatever. But just be the first person today to send me a message, and I will send you a copy of this book. I'm already got it on my list of things to do, to run to the post office and mail some of them out already. So if you want to win a copy of that book, you be the first one to send me a message today. So on today's program, we got a lot to talk about. Of course, I have to tell you about the new Marty McFly Award. There's not going to be any school choice for you in Wyoming. Nope. That's apparently against the Wyoming Constitution. So says the very liberal Wyoming Supreme Court. So they affirmed the district judge's ruling, and so now that the state of Wyoming has to appeal that to a higher court, which I hope that they will do. Jim Comey has pleaded guilty, though he didn't have to do a perp walk. And, everybody else in the Trump administration, they had to walk in front of cameras in chains and completely disgraced, but not Jim Comey. Nope. Mr. Higher honor himself didn't have to walk in front of the cameras. In fact, the judge let him walk in the back door of the courthouse to put in his guilty plea. So we're going to talk about that. Letitia James has been indicted. That's fantastic. Her hypocrisy knows no bounds, my friends. You try to go after President Trump for trumped-up charges, no pun intended, And, when you break the law, bad things happen to you. And then if we get to it, who knows if we will. Capitalism is not cancellation, my friends. There's this idiot in Nashville. His name is Zach Bryan. I don't think, I probably have heard one of his songs on the radio, but I really don't know who he is. But he has written a song that the lyrics are terrible. I haven't listened to it, but the song lyrics, they're pretty offensive. It's very much anti-ICE, very, it's a pretty disgusting song, and the lyrics are shitty. Pardon my language. I'm a little fired up this morning. I should have had the old bleep button on myself. Anyway, so lots to do on the program today, and it is Open Line Friday. So let's get to it. So the Nobel Peace Prize. Donald Trump has a peace deal in the Middle East, but the Nobel Committee has decided that that's not enough. You see, but they have a long record of, not awarding their so-called Nobel Peace Prize to, people that actually deserve it. That's why I said, they're moving quickly towards irrelevancy. Let's first start with the piece from Fox News, and we have another studio dog wants to get out of here. Every morning I start the program, and when I'm here at the house, I've usually got a couple studio dogs with me, and they just don't want to sit in the studio too long and talk about all these liberal idiots. So anyway, before we get to the morons in Norway, from Fox News, Nobel Peace Prize goes to Marina Corina Machado, despite calls for Trump to receive the award. And I quote, "The Nobel Committee awarded this year's Peace Prize to Marina Corina Machado, amid calls for President Donald Trump to receive the award in the wake of his brokering a historic deal between Israel and Hamas." Okay, so it's not just that one. He has brokered several peace deals. In fact, this might be number 8. Number 8, number 9. I mean, you lose count after a while. But there are conflicts all across the fruited plain that Donald Trump has been able to solve. But the Nobel Committee, they don't really pay any attention to that. Machado is a Venezuelan opposition leader, and she was described as, quote, "a brave and committed champion of peace" by Jorgen Watne Fredes, the chair of the Norwegian Nobel Committee. Quote, "She is receiving the Nobel Peace Prize for her tireless work promoting democratic rights for the people of Venezuela, for her struggle to achieve a just and peaceful transition from dictatorship to democracy," he said. But she hasn't achieved that yet. Okay, so we're fighting for it, and we're trying to get rid of a dictatorship, but last time I checked, Venezuela is still a dictatorship. Now, there's another guy in another country that has actually solved a couple of military conflicts, who has actually created peace, in a region that has been fighting for 2,000 years, who has brought together countries who were sworn enemies of Israel and who are now defending Israel. But pay no attention to that. Focus on the activist in Venezuela. Quote, "He has the heart of a humanitarian, and there will never be anyone like him who can move mountains with the sheer force of his will." The Nobel Committee proved they place politics over peace. Now, Trump has received several high-profile nominations since returning to office. However, the committee's deadline, and this is their excuse for the whole thing, the deadline for nominations is January 31st, meaning that he could be eligible for next year's prize. He's not eligible for this one. No, not in stopping all of the conflicts that they have across the globe. Nope. We stick with deadlines, and we have to acknowledge somebody who, admittedly, has done some pretty great work, but hasn't been able to accomplish anything. Continuing, earlier this week, the Hostages and Missing Families Forum, a group representing the families of hostages and terror victims formed after October 7th, appealed to the committee on Trump's behalf. Quote, "In this past year, no leader or organization has contributed more to peace around the world than Donald Trump. While many have spoken eloquently about peace, he has actually achieved it. While others have offered empty promises, he has delivered tangible results that have saved countless lives," the forum wrote in a letter. But you see, that's not what the Nobel Committee looks for. No, they don't. They don't pay any attention to people who have actually done things. Rather, they're more interested in the potentiality of things. What could happen, what may happen, what the possibilities are, and what may happen in the future. Perhaps, I don't know, world peace. But since it is Open Line Friday, my friends, and I think that we need a blast from the past. I think we should talk about Barack Obama receiving the Nobel Peace Prize. You see, he got it after only a couple of days in office, maybe a couple of months in office. And like Machado, he hadn't done anything either. But they gave him the Peace Prize for what he may do, what might happen, and that he gave really great speeches, and that he lifted up all the Muslims in the world with a speech. By the way, and for the record, I am not one of those people who thinks that Barack Obama is all that eloquent. I'm not one of those people that think his cadence is so hypnotic. There are a lot of people that say, "Oh gosh, doesn't he give such a great speech?" No, they're terrible. And they really don't make any sense because he's a liberal and he says a whole bunch of stuff that's really, really bad. You didn't build that. Yeah, whatever. Well, anyway, here is a piece from Rush Limbaugh talking about Obama being given the Nobel Peace Prize. And since it's Open Line Friday, this is Cowboy State Politics Live. And I, of course, can only aspire to be the Rush Limbaugh of Wyoming. Here is Rush Limbaugh on Obama getting the Nobel Peace Prize.
There aren't words for this. Well, there are, but it's just... You imagine, folks, how big Obama's head is today? I didn't think it could get any bigger. But I think his head's now growing so big that his ears actually fit.
And now, from sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday!
What a week! What a week! It's great to be with you, Rush Limbaugh, Open Line Friday. Telephone number 800-282-2882 if you want to call. Email address lrushmo@eibnet.com. Wait, my volume's not loud enough. I don't hear myself well enough. A shocking announcement today from the National Football League, an announcement that has shocked the football world. Commissioner Roger Goodell and the board at the National Football League have named the Kansas City Chiefs the winners of this season's Super Bowl, which will be played in February. The NFL decided to reward the Chiefs for their good intentions at rebuilding a lackluster franchise. Despite their 0-4 record, they have been proclaimed the winners of the Super Bowl yet to be played in 2009. In a related story, Barack Obama has won the Nobel Prize for Economics now, as well as peace. This for his job stimulus plan. Record and continuing massive job losses, which the rest of the elites in the Western world love to see. And he is going to be rewarded for a second economics prize from the Nobel people next year for returning the nation's wealth to its rightful owners. Folks, I think the people who used to run the election board for Saddam Hussein's government were hired by the Nobel Committee here to tally the votes. Reuters went out there, asked the Taliban and Hamas what they think. Obama getting a piece of... I don't believe this. He's not only the first post-racial president, he's also the nation's first post-accomplishment president. He has risen above incompetence. He's now judged on wishful thinking. Gore, Carter, Obama. Can you imagine how ticked off Bill Clinton had to be today? I mean, the first gut reaction when he found out that this little man-child in Chicago has not done diddly squat, got the Peace Prize, and Clinton's out there. My God, I got my library massage parlor. I even scored $2 million stimulus money for that thing. Did you see that yesterday with law? I got it. I got my global initiative. I've fleeced people for billions and billions of dollars under the premise of world peace. And what? I get slapped again, all because semen on a dress. They just have no respect. Don't worry about it, Mr. President. Your day is coming. Gore, Carter, Obama, soon Bill Clinton. You see a pattern here, folks? Liberal sellouts. Liberal sellouts get this prize. George Bush liberates 50 million Muslims. Ronald Reagan liberates hundreds of millions of Europeans, saves parts of Latin America. Any awards? No, just derision. Obama gives speeches trashing his own country, and he gets a prize for it. This actually makes total sense when you look at who the Nobel people are.
We got to finish this up.
Norwegians, Europeans, they love what Obama is doing. And this fully exposes, folks, the illusion that is Obama. This is a greater embarrassment than losing the Olympics bid was.
All right. That's enough. But Rush goes on to explain that part of the reason why they gave Obama the award is because they didn't want the surge in Afghanistan to happen. They didn't want Obama to send 40,000 troops down to the place where not even the Russians could take Afghanistan. I mean, we could have if we done it right, but Joe Biden pulled us out of there, and we had Barack Obama, and it's just a big mess. But one of the reasons why the now completely irrelevant Nobel Committee decided to give Obama the award is, but he'd be a man of peace. He couldn't send 40,000 troops to the Middle East. But the truth is, my friends, that the Nobel Peace Prize has become irrelevant, and it was irrelevant. Actually, it had some credibility before they gave it to Barack Obama, but now it doesn't really mean anything. And so really, it's just a big solid gold medal and $1 million prize. And that's about all that it is. People who actually create peace in the world probably don't give two craps about it. And it's obvious that Donald Trump is probably never going to get the award. I mean, maybe next year. Who knows? But he has to meet the deadline. We have to stick to the deadline. We cannot recognize anybody who just solved a conflict that's been going on for 2,000 years. But, okay, so that's a little bit of an exaggeration. Now, let me explain why. Because how many times has Hamas had a peace plan, a ceasefire with Israel? How many times have the Palestinians sat down at the peace table and said, yeah, we'll disarm, and then they don't? Well, it's been a lot. So at the very best on this one, great, awesome, incredible job getting everybody to the table. But it's like I said yesterday, where we were talking about yesterday, we have to trust but verify in all cases.
If and when they don't, at first pull your punches. If they persist, pull the plug. It's still trust but verify. It's still play but cut the cards. It's still watch closely. And don't be afraid to see what you see.
Exactly right. Trust but verify. And I mean, it is an achievement in and of itself, getting Saudi Arabia and all those Middle Eastern countries to the table to talk to Israel, and then getting that. He should get an award for Nobel should, they're irrelevant anyway, so why not come up with the Marty McFly award and just give it to Trump anyway, but give it to everybody else except Trump. But just getting them to the table was an achievement in and of itself, because I mean, we're talking about a conflict. Most of those countries, by the way, Egypt, they were right in the middle of the 6-Day War, the 1967 war. They were right in the middle of it. And now they're sitting at the peace table with Israel. So, I mean, this is an incredible feat that I don't know who else could have done it. In fact, I don't think there's anybody else that could have done it. Certainly not the Venezuelan who hasn't accomplished anything in Venezuela. From the Daily Wire, it seemed almost impossible. Praise for Trump pours in on news on the Middle East peace deal. And I quote, praise for President Donald Trump has started to roll in after Hamas and Israel announced that they have agreed to the first phase of the peace plan to end the war in Gaza and potentially create a path to a Palestinian state. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was one of the first to credit Trump for the plan's framework that Hamas and the Israeli negotiators had just reached an agreement on. Quote, through steadfast resolve, powerful military action, and the great efforts of our great friend and ally, President Trump, we have reached this critical turning point, Netanyahu posted on X. I thank President Trump for his leadership, his partnership, and his unwavering commitment to the safety of Israel and the freedom of the hostages. Former Hamas hostages and the families of hostages still trapped in Gaza hailed the agreement, which, if carried out, would see the release of the remaining 20 hostages still alive in Gaza. The hostage survivors and families expressed gratitude to Trump for shepherding the process. There's an iconic photo of Trump with Secretary Marco Rubio has gone viral after capturing the moment that Rubio interrupted a roundtable to tell the president that a deal between Israel and Hamas was imminent. Though not all network coverage struck a celebratory tone, even CNN's Jake Tapper hesitated to call the agreement a peace deal, arguing that it was a ceasefire deal at best. But the reaction from the mainstream liberal media was nonetheless pretty surprising. Here's a quick montage that I put together for you so you can hear some of the media reaction. Here, check this out.
This is a really big deal for that region and for this president.
It certainly is, Brett. It certainly is, Brett. It's a very big deal indeed, something that seemed almost impossible for so long, not to mention the last 2 years since October 7th. So I think, the president will get a great deal of credit for this.
Obviously, blessed are the peacemakers indeed, but
Tapper.
It is worth pointing out, this is a ceasefire deal, right? This is not a larger peace deal.
No, it is
about a Palestinian state of any
it's not
sort,
about
and
that.
who gets to rule a Palestinian state, and
that's in
Israel gets security guarantees, how, and all that. That is still TBD, right?
I mean, yes, but, because the yes, but part of that is that, yes, this is the first phase of this deal where the two key parts of that was a ceasefire and the release of the hostages and also the release of Palestinian prisoners that are being held in Israel.
Alex, if Donald Trump doesn't get the Nobel Peace Prize, the committee should disband.
Oh, absolutely. This is a historic achievement. He's taken away all of Hamas's leverage over Israel. It's gone now. The hostages were the leverage. If they're coming home, we're going to have a celebration, but it also could be the end of Hamas as a military power in the region. This could be the beginning of lasting peace in the region, God willing.
For Israel, make no mistake, this is
CNN.
a huge night, potentially the end of the nightmare. For the people of Gaza, this is going to be an enormous relief. For the people of Israel, potentially the end of a 2-year-long nightmare.
And for these families still waiting for the remaining hostages who are still alive to come home, this has been an agonizing wait. And of course, the families who will get the remains of loved ones who died while in captivity.
Yeah, that last one was David Muir. The guy that moderated the debate with Trump that, corrected him the entire time and was wrong on just about everything. But anyway, pretty much round praise all the way around for our commander-in-chief. And truly, what he has accomplished in the Middle East and elsewhere is kind of amazing. The piece from the Daily Wire continues on. Quote, let's see, that was Britt Hume. Probably the best one, Nate Morris, a businessman and Republican candidate for U.S. Senate in Craptucky, said that not only should the agreement win Trump the Nobel Peace Prize award, but that the award should be renamed after the president. He said they should just name the damn thing right after him. It's exactly right. And that he was not awarded the Nobel Peace Prize is just truly incredible, man, my friends. And I think it speaks to the irrelevancy of such a prestigious award, and what once was a prestigious award. But now, after they gave it to Obama and the freedom fighter or whatever she is, Machado, in Venezuela, and not to Donald Trump. I mean, it just shows you that these liberal elites in Europe, and by the way, the Peace Prize, the Nobel Committee is in Norway. And, somewhere I thought I had a video of that the Peace Prize guy talking about it, but I guess I don't. Let's see here. Let me just look one more time. But anyway, it's fascinating to me. And our commander-in-chief, and here's the other thing, too. Conservatives, we don't really care about awards. That's what liberals care about, the Nobel Prize, the Academy Awards, and all of those. We conservatives really don't give two craps about it. What we're more interested in is actually getting results And if you'll notice, and just, I've got a piece, for later on in the stack of stuff, but how Republicans will continually take abuse from the media so long as we're getting results. That's the only thing that conservatives really care about. It's all these liberal elite types that have to have all of the awards and accolades, and they have to sit around drinking tea with their pinky hanging out. That's what liberals care about awards. And it's awards that are awarded by liberals to liberals, and so why would we really give two craps about it? We don't. But Donald Trump certainly deserves the Nobel Peace Prize, though I'd be shocked if he ever gets it. Ronald Reagan didn't get it for, liberating everybody from the Soviet Union. The list is long and distinguished of great conservatives that didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize because the committee is run by a bunch of liberals and they're Europeans anyway. So they're at least half a socialist just for living in Europe. From the cow pie, this is, everybody saw this one coming. The Wyoming Supreme Court has upheld a lower court ruling that blocks the school choice program that was passed in the legislature last year. And, I'm not in favor of this bill at all because I think that it's, first, I think that it created a whole nother entitlement. So I'll have to look at the bill to see if there was a severability clause in there. I don't think there was, but so the whole bill is struck down as far as I know. And anyway, so it created universal pre-K. That's the reason why I don't want another entitlement, nor do I think that the school needs any more influence over our young people. In fact, I was kind of in favor of freeing up all that education money so that parents could homeschool their kids, which is, by the way, is the best place that that your children could learn. That, they're not being taught by liberal Democrats, and the schools are populated by a whole bunch of them. But here's from the cow pie. Wyoming Supreme Court keeps school choice program blocked. And I quote, the Wyoming Supreme Court on Tuesday denied the state's request to overrule a lower court and let a new school choice scholarship program go into effect, at least while the case against it is ongoing. The Wyoming Supreme Court Chief Justice Lynn Baumgarten in a Tuesday order noted that the state's executive branch asked the High Court to reverse an earlier order by Larimer County District Judge Peter Froelicher, who, by the way, is also the same guy that is the judge in the WEA lawsuit that said the state has to give students lunch and a computer, and that's part of an education. Yeah. Anyway, he blocked the Steamboat Legacy Scholarship Act from going into effect during the case against it. Quote, after careful review of the state's request, a public school advocacy coalition. Okay, so this is another thing that's irritating the living crap out of me from Claire McFarland and the cow pie. They refuse to call the Wyoming Education Association a teachers union. That's what it is. They collect dues from all of their members. They lobby down in the legislature. They are, by definition, a union. And Claire McFarland and the liberal cow pie continually call this outfit a public school advocacy coalition. No, it's a teachers union. Stop lying to your audience, cow pie, and tell us the truth. It is a union. Stop playing with language. Words mean things, and stop messing around with them. Quote, let's see here. The court finds the motion to stay should be denied. Froelicher had concluded in July that the scholarship program likely violates the Wyoming Constitution's promise of an equitable and high-quality education and its ban on giving public money to private educational entities not directly under state control. Okay, so there's a couple of things that are wrong with this paragraph. The first one is that it doesn't say, the Constitution does not say that you can't give public money to another education outfit. It says that public money can't be given to anything not under the absolute control of the state. It does say that. But if you're going to quote something, cow pie, quote it correctly. Don't, I tell you what, when we take a break, I'll dig in my bag, I'll get out the copy of the Constitution, which is usually sitting right here, but I had a meeting to go to, so I put my copy in my briefcase, and you know what, looking at the clock, man, this program is just rocking and rolling along, so why don't we take a break, and when we come back, I will finish up this article, and I will also find that passage in the Wyoming Constitution, and we will quote it correctly. But first, let's go ahead and take a break. Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. We'll be right back. Call me if you want to. 307-374-8989. Back in a minute, my friends. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live, Open Line Friday. I'm your host, David Iverson, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. Welcome back to the program, my friends. If you do want to be part of the show, which I highly suggest, you take part in Wyoming's most listened to conservative program, the number 29 on the list of the top 100 programs podcasts you should be listening to in 2025, an honor that nobody else in the Cowboy State has. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Now, before the break, we were talking about this educational school bill, or this educational savings account bill, which, by the way, I'm not in favor of for a number of reasons, one of which that it has an entitlement in it, which I am not in favor of. But where we left off is actually quoting the passage that Claire McFarland was referring to. Now, it is Article 3, Section 36, and while it does say educational, so I kind of misspoke on that one a little bit, but it's in a long list of other things, so let me just read it to you. No appropriation shall be made for charitable, industrial, educational, there's the word she was hitting on, or benevolent purposes for any person, corporation, or community not under the absolute control of the state, nor to any denominational or sectarian institution or association. So essentially, you can't give public money to any outfit that the state doesn't directly control. And there is another one. That one is Article 16, Section 6. And let me just quote that one to you real quick so we are on the same page. Here's what it says: loan or credit. And I quote, neither the state nor any county, city, township, town, school district, or any other political subdivision shall loan or give its credit or make donations to or in aid of any individual, association, or corporation except for necessary support for the poor. Now, what proponents of this bill were banking on was that last sentence, necessary support for the poor. Because, I mean, we could make a great argument that, while some parents who may not have the financial means as other people do, I mean, they still absolutely have a right to educate their kids, and the Constitution guarantees, and I didn't look this one up, but it guarantees that all students in the state will have a high-quality education paid for by you and me. That's another long story, how that thing ended up in our Constitution. But the truth is, I didn't know that this thing was constitutional from the very beginning, and, I think it's a great idea if we could pull it off. But the problem is that there are constitutional questions all the way around it. And I, for one, am pretty happy that this thing got struck down because it's got that entitlement in it. And I will verify that that the bill doesn't have a severability clause in it, but I'm pretty sure that it doesn't. Wyoming Attorney General Keith Couts, former Supreme Court Justice Keith Couts, and Deputy Attorney General Mackenzie Williams, in their September 18th motion for a stay on Frolicker's block, argued that Frolicker's order, quote, irreparably interferes with the public policy of the state of Wyoming and harmed students, families, and schools that were slated to benefit from the scholarship program in the 2025 fall semester. Quote, if this court does not stay the injunction, these injuries will persist and compound in the future. The Wyoming Education Association, the Education Advocacy Coalition, as Claire McFarland calls them, and a group of parents of public school children countered in an October 3rd filing saying the act is plainly unconstitutional and the state showed no reason why the high court should preserve it from Frolicker's block. So let's see here. I don't know if they're going to appeal this thing. I think it's a steep road to go up with the passages in the Constitution that I just read to you. I don't see how we can give state money to another institution that is not under direct control of the state. Now, where they tried to get around that is it's not like the state was going to write checks to individual families. They had a marketplace set up to where families could purchase educational materials from the state's website, and that was what they tried to use to get around the passage in the Constitution. But it's not enough because the terminal end of those funds isn't under the quote absolute control of the state. So yeah, I don't think that this thing's going to fly. Well, I think educational savings accounts are a good idea. I don't think that this is the way to do it, simply because they added that stupid entitlement on top of it. So anyway, that one's down the river, at least for now. From the Daily Caller. Now back to the government shutdown. By the way, how are you feeling any difference from the government being shut down? I know some members of the military did not get their paychecks. And they'll get back pay, but that doesn't really help buy groceries right now. But aside from those folks, have you noticed anything different? Have you noticed that, your life is crumbling around your ears? Have you noticed any of that? No, neither have I. And neither has Nancy Pelosi, by the way, although she can't explain why. From the Daily Caller, Nancy Pelosi can't explain how the GOP's government funding bill isn't a clean continuing resolution. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi could not back up her claim on Wednesday that the Republicans' continuing resolution to fund the government is not clean. The Democrats have repeatedly denied that the Republicans passed a clean CR, which is a temporary spending measure to fund the government at existing spending levels. During an appearance on Inside Politics, Pelosi did not specify how the legislation does not fit under the definition of a clean CR. Here you go. Take a listen to this.
About where the differences are, and they are very big. They are voting yes on what we say here in Washington, a clean CR, a bill to keep the government running for 7 weeks, and Democrats are voting no, and for the reasons you just said. So how are they shutting down the government?
First of all, it isn't a clean CR.
Okay.
So let's not stipulate to that. It's not a clean CR. It's not going into that. The point is, Democrats who created Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the Affordable Care Act, all of that, are now being asked, reject that so we can give a tax cut to the rich. We're not doing it. And it isn't a question of, well, let's come back together so we can discuss it. That isn't going to happen. They had that chance. Now they just have to open government with it as a stipulation.
So how do you get there?
So anyway, she couldn't even tell. She makes the claim, it's not a clean CR, which is the talking point coming from the Democrat Party, and then can't explain why. So is the continuing resolution that was passed by the House of Representatives, the only thing that it does is it funds the government at current levels for a couple of weeks so that they have time to negotiate a new spending measure, a budget for that matter. But that's all that it does. And the Democrats are objecting to it because in the big, beautiful bill, those Obamacare subsidies that will expire at the end of the year are going to go away. And so that is what the fight is over. But the Democrats continue to make claims that they can't even back up, that they can't argue for. And see, this is a perfect example of what I was talking about yesterday, that the Democrats, they don't really care about the reasoning of their arguments. The only thing they care about is convincing you that you should believe them. And it doesn't matter what the reasoning is behind it. It doesn't matter if it makes sense or not to the Democrats. The only thing they care about is the end result, which is the Obamacare subsidies and giving health care to illegal immigrants. Quote, contrary to the Democrats' claim, the Committee for a Responsible Budget, a nonpartisan organization, stated that the resolution was as clean of a CR as you could get, according to the New York Times. The Democrats said they voted against the CR over its failure to extend Biden-era subsidies in the Affordable Care Act, the not really Affordable Care Act, in exchange for their support, which has caused an ongoing shutdown. The CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, previously estimated that such a permanent extension of the tax credit would expand the deficit by $350 billion between 2026 and 2035. Democrat Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman, Catherine Cortez Masto of Nevada, and independent Maine Senator Angus King, who caucuses with the Democrats, were the only ones to vote in favor of keeping the government open. Fetterman said that he voted for our country over his party and that the government shutdown was a sad day for our nation. Well, like I started this segment, have you noticed anything that's different? I mean, yeah, okay, so there are some military members that aren't getting paid, which is the complete fault of the Democrat Party. They had a chance to pay our military members, but they chose not to, in favor of giving more money to illegal aliens. So illegal aliens over military members. It doesn't make it any better that our currently enlisted and officers in the military aren't getting paid. Oh, by the way, this is a different little topic. I digress a little bit. But did you see the idiotic op-ed in the Cowboy by Gail Simmons? And first, when did it become journalism to publish two opposing op-eds and then to write a column or an article about the two opposing op-eds and simply explain why they're opposing each other? When did that become journalism? There was a comment on that post this morning, and the answer was, when you think your audience has the brain power of a goldfish. Perfect example, because that's the Cowboy. I mean, they're populated by a bunch of redcoats and rhinos. Well, anyway, in Gail Simmons' piece, she starts it out like this. And I quote, "Before I retired from the Navy, my final assignment was serving as an aide to a 2-star admiral in charge of the entire Navy submarine construction and maintenance program. He chose me, a female supply corps officer with a financial management background, over male officers with a direct submarine experience. That was unprecedented." Well, unfortunately for Gail Simmons, I have my operatives doing a little bit of research on her military record, and it turns out that she served on ship from, I think it was 1993 to 1994. Let me pull up my text message here so I can read it for you. Here we go. Just a second. Yeah. So according to a couple of research. So Gail Simmons served on ship, according to articles that she's written, from 1992 to 1994. So 2 years. And in that time, there were a whole bunch of people that were enlisted and female officers. In fact, that started happening way before Gail Simmons. So it couldn't in any way be unprecedented, as she says. In fact, on the USS Shenandoah from 1983 to 1986, they had over 100 female enlisted members, and they had 7 female officers on the ship. So Gail Simmons' assignment to that admiral was not unprecedented, nor was she the first or the second or the third. Having female officers in the military happened way before Gail Simmons. I mean, it's just another example of her making wild claims and not being able to back them up. But by the way, if you want some hilarious entertainment, go look at the Facebook post from the Cowboy on that op-ed from Gail Simmons, and just read through the comments. There's an Army Army service member in there that just castigates her. I mean, it is absolutely hilarious. But that's what Democrat types like Gail Simmons do. Of course, she'll tell you up and down that she's a Republican, but she's really not. Anyway, I mean, facts don't matter to the cow pie, and they certainly don't matter to redcoats like Gail Simmons. Anyway, Senate Majority Leader Chuck U. Schumer supported the exact same CR in March and stated on the Senate floor that he refused to shut down the government. Vice President J.D. Vance said that Chuck U. Schumer is caving to the far left wing of his party because he's afraid of AOC challenging him in the upcoming primary. AOC, and by the way, that would be a gift to the Republican Party if AOC beat Chuck U. Schumer for a Senate seat. The downside, of course, is that we would have to put up with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for the next 6 years. So, I mean, there's pluses and minuses to everything, but I mean, she's a constant source of entertainment. And getting rid of Chuck U. Schumer, that might be a benefit too. You gotta play chess when all these other people are playing checkers. You gotta look at all the moves on the board and figure out, who's who in the zoo and, figure out who might be a better choice on the other. I mean, we do that stuff here in Wyoming, I mean, when you don't have a great candidate, you look and say, well, okay, but they might take out this person. And while let me give you a perfect example. House District 40, formerly populated by Poison Barry Crago. He went to the Senate. Well, Marilyn Connolly, man, she actually refers to herself as cannoli. It was a total slip of the tongue on the House floor, and now she is. I mean, what are you going to do with a dumb nickname? You just got to accept it and run with it. Most of us don't get to choose our nicknames, so all right, good for her. But she's not very good at her job, and I think she's kind of dumb as a box of rocks. But the upside on that is, while she still kind of votes the same way that Bowie did, but she's far less effective on the floor. So that's the upside. So yeah, we got another liberal in there, but not nearly as effective as Bowie Crago was. I just love making fun of that guy. He's so easy to irritate, and his nerves are about as thin as this piece of paper. And once you start talking about it, man, it really sets him off. So anyway, now I'm not really that big of a fan of Joe Rogan. I like some of the stuff that he said, but I don't sit down. I'm not one of those people that watches his program. Maybe I've seen different sound bites and different video segments from his show, but I don't sit down there and watch all 3 hours of his program. Though on occasion, he does talk about some good stuff. Now, recently he had a guest on, and they were talking about Gavin Newsom, and well, you know what? I should just let you watch it because they go through part of Gavin Newsom's long list of failures as governor of California. And, there's this piece here in The Blaze, and it's entitled, He Did Horrible Bleep. Joe Rogan rips into Gavin Newsom's presidential aspirations, and then Gavin Newsom fires back. So let's go ahead and listen to the soundbite, and then I will we'll finish up the article. So here's Gavin Newsom, here's Joe Rogan talking about Gavin Newsom. Check this out.
They don't have any faith in Gavin Newsom.
Oh, yeah.
Which is kind of funny because he wants to be president so bad.
That's true what it looks like.
You can't ruin a city and then go on to ruin a state and say, guys, that was just practice.
I know.
Once I get it as a president, I'm going to fix it. Fix it all.
I mean, it's so crazy, but he's such a great politician. I mean,
no,
he's so smooth.
He's
you
not,
don't think
though.
so?
No, I think he's terrible.
How's he remained in power for so long?
Low competition. There's no one who's good is competing against him. There's no sincerity.
I should say he's not a good. I should say he's smooth. He comes.
I mean, he's a good bullshit artist.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But it's like what the things that he says when he gets confronted with things. We're the highest this and the highest that. Like everybody's leaving.
Yeah.
You have the highest unemployment.
Yeah.
You have the highest homelessness.
Look what they did with Hollywood.
Money's missing. You killed Hollywood. Like Hollywood doesn't exist anymore. It's literally gone.
That was such an easy one.
Mandated vaccines for kids that didn't need them. You guys, he did horrible shit.
I mean, exactly right. Gavin Newsom has done really, really horrible crap in California, and he wants to export that to the rest of the country. But really, when you look at the Democrat bench, he's about all they got. That or Kamala Harris. I mean, and take your pick there. But whomever the Democrats run, they are going to get creamed by J.D. Vance. And, okay, so we got 3 years left of the second Donald Trump presidency. But if it goes like it's going right now, like solving the problem in the Middle East, who, didn't get the Marty McFly award. But if things keep going that way, Democrats don't stand a chance. And certainly not Gavin Newsom. I mean, there's a long list of the worst stuff, the really bad stuff that he's done. But Newsom did respond to Joe Rogan in saying, we've got the fourth largest economy in the world. Okay, that's true, but that's not a result of Gavin Newsom. Number one in manufacturing. Okay, well, all of his factories are leaving. That's why a lot of them are cropping up in Wyoming. Number one in farming. I don't know if that's true. New business starts. I'm pretty sure that that's not true. First for tech and VC investments. Fortune 5. Okay. First in public higher education. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that that's the case. Oh, as it relates to California education, yesterday I did a great interview with a gal named Leslie Sawyer. She is the Moms for Liberty California Legislative Chair, and I did an interview with her, and we're going to play that. I'm going to be gone. So I'll play it on the podcast first, and then, when I come back after my elk hunt, then we'll probably play it on the program. But that'll be the Monday edition of the podcast, is that great interview with Leslie Sawyer. You're really going to like her, and what you'll find out is that a lot of the problems that we have in Wyoming education are no different than the problems in California. That they're very much the same thing. So there's this belief in Wyoming that, it doesn't happen here. It doesn't happen in Wyoming. We're insulated from everything else that happens in the country. That's total bullcrap. You can tell from our conversation that the very same things that we struggle with as far as education goes here in Wyoming, it's the same stuff as in California. And so it's not a matter of, it's not happening here. That is total bullcrap. Our education system is chock full of liberals, just like it is in California. There's a whole bunch of liberals in our legislature, though they hide in the Republican Party, that are pushing for more and more spending, more and more administration, and really the schools have become a breeding ground, what do you call it? Like a greenhouse for, that's probably a good term, a greenhouse for liberal bureaucrats. I mean, that's what it is. One of my favorite statistics in Wyoming education is that over the past couple of years, and this is from like 2 years ago, so I haven't checked up on the statistic recently, but for the last several years, enrollment in Wyoming schools has actually gone down. And at the time that I got the statistic from the Education Committee, enrollment in Wyoming schools had gone down about 2,000 students. But during that same time period, administration and staff had gone up by 3,600 positions. So not only did the amount of kids you've got to educate go down, you doubled the amount of staff. So we're top heavy in a big way. Just look at Sheridan County. There's 3 different school districts, which means 3 superintendents, 3 administrative staffs, 3, it goes on and on and on. The truth is that Sheridan County could fire 2 of those superintendents and their staff, have 1 superintendent for the whole county, and we would save money. And you might say, and I've heard this argument before from, I was at a teacher's little open house thing about guns, and we got on the topic of school superintendents, and the argument was, well, are you telling me the superintendent in the city of Sheridan knows what's going on in Claremont? And I said, I don't think that really matters. Natrona County has 1 school district, which means 1 superintendent, which, by the way, it's a bigger school district. There's way more students, and they have other schools, like rural schools, like Midwest. And so, I mean, that argument really doesn't hold any water at all. So anyway, the Leslie Sawyer interview, that'll be Monday on the podcast. It's actually a great discussion, and I thought it was pretty interesting. Antifa, we're hearing a lot about that on the news, of course, with Portland burning down and pretty much the same thing happening in Chicago. The White House held a roundtable in which Antifa funding came up, and the Blaze has been doing a lot of work on who is funding this outfit. And I encourage you to go to theblaze.com or go to Blaze TV, and there's lots of programs about it. But this piece, it's from the Blaze. Trump praises Blaze News reporting during Antifa roundtable at the White House and slaps down PMSNBC and the Communist News Network. And I quote, President Donald Trump sat at a roundtable Wednesday that reports from Blaze News were helping guide his efforts to root out financial support for left-wing violence. The president was answering a question from Blaze News reporter Rebecca Zelchik, at the White House event that also included Blaze News reporter Julio Rosas among the panelists. Their ratings are terrible. PMSNBC is dying. The Communist News Network is dying like a dog. Poor CNN. They're so pathetic. They cited one possible figure to investigate and prompted Trump to ask the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to look into the matter. Quote, you're talking about the money funding these Antifa organizations. And somebody brought up Neville Roy Singham, who, by the way, is married to one of the co-founders of Code Pink, the infamous left-wing organization. Now, I've got a couple of sound bites I'm going to play for you after the break, and one that is going to take us down a little bit of a historical rabbit hole. But I think it's important because the smear continues to be thrown around. So we're going to do that after the break. But first, an absolutely obscene profit timeout. Open Line Friday coming right back at you in just a couple of minutes.
Ever since gold backing was removed from the dollar, the value has dropped significantly over the past few decades. Experts say this is one of the main reasons goods are more expensive and your savings are worth less each year. How would you know how many dollars to save for retirement if the valuation of the dollar changes over time? Would you work all week for that $20 gold piece? Let's look at the valuation of this coin from the 1970s to today. When President Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, this coin traded for about $275. Today, it trades for about $14,000. Buying and holding rare coins using only a fraction of your portfolio is our suggested way to save for the future. Call U.S. Coin Capital at 1-800-878-2646 to get your free United States Gold and Silver Buyer's Guide.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Welcome to Lessons in Civility by Morton Buildings. Gentlemen, is your garage completely jam-packed full of all of your unnecessary crap? And your lovely wife has been on your tail, nagging you non-stop to clean it out? It's not because she just wants to incessantly irritate you. Chivalry dictates that you should clear out a space so she can park her car inside and you don't end up sleeping on the couch anymore. To do that, contact Nick and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Not only are they the experts in metal building construction, they're also skilled at keeping you out of the doghouse. One more time. Their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. This has been Lessons in Civility from Morton Buildings. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm David Iverson, having way more fun than I should legally be allowed to have, with talent given to me by God himself. Welcome back to the program, my friends. It's Open Line Friday on the show. The phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. If you want to be part of the program, we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about, which sometimes knowing, it just kind of terrifies me, knowing what's coming. But never fear, I am more skilled than just about anybody in Wyoming media. Well, more than anybody. It's true. I mean, I don't know. I mean, facts are facts, my friends. It just is what it is. Now, before the break, we were talking about Antifa or Antifa. I don't know how to pronounce it. The lovely Christine and I were having a debate about that last night. Antifa is more widely known, I suppose, than Antifa, but whatever. I mean, it's antithesis. It's an I sound. Antifa, whatever. I don't know. But the Trump administration held a roundtable in which they were talking about it. And let's see here. I've got, yeah. Okay, so here's a quick video of that roundtable. And Trump suggesting that, they're going to go after some of the funding. Here, check this out.
President Rebecca with Blaze News. I'm curious to know, so you're talking about the money funding these Antifa organizations, and somebody brought up Roy Singham, I think it was you, who, by the way, is married to one of the co-founders of Code Pink, this infamous left-wing organization. I'm curious to know the administration.
Who is that?
Roy Singham. He's married to.
No, did you say they're here?
No, he's not. A journalist brought him up, but.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Seamus, thank you.
Good bring up.
Excellent.
Go ahead.
He's somebody who's been reported on extensively, and I'd love to know what the administration is going to do to actually bring consequences to some of these names you mentioned.
Well, I don't know the name, but I would like to ask Pam to take a look at it. A lot of the best information we find are through you and other people like you, so I'd like you to look at it, Pam.
Yeah, okay, so, I mean, the point there is that, we've got to start going after the funding of a lot of these left-wing organizations. And I mean, you cut off the funding, you dry up the movement, or you dry up the organization, because you got to have money to pay these people when they're not at work. And that some of these folks are just professional provocateurs, and that's what they do. Well, let's go ahead and take a call. Let's see here. We got Representative John Bear. Welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you for having me on. I appreciate you taking my call this morning.
Yeah, of course, man.
Enjoying your show.
Thanks. Hey, do me a favor and turn off or mute the program you have playing in the back. That way we won't get an echo on the show. What's on your mind, John?
I'm not sure. I think I am muted. So if you're here, let me just take you off of speakerphone. Is that better?
That's way better. All right. Now, where were we? What's on your mind, my friend?
You were asking what I called in about, and it's really, I just wanted to continue the conversation about the ESAs, if I may, and just correct a couple of things, just for your listeners' sake.
Sure.
First of all, I wanted to say that there is a severability clause that's very strong in that bill, and specifically calls out the parents who might be affected by an injunction like this, and or somebody stopping the money coming to the parents. So it specifically calls them out and allows them to bring a lawsuit.
Yeah, I didn't know about that.
As you know,
or didn't remember.
Litigation is expensive. Yep. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I agree with you, that we don't want entitlements, and this bill still does have an entitlement. But I wanted to just share with your listeners a little bit of the goings-on in the legislature, some of the inside baseball, if you will. The bill that left the House, and this is House Bill 199, the Steamboat Scholarship Act, it left the House without any entitlement whatsoever, no universal preschool, which was a Biden initiative. And then when it was in the Senate, the universal preschool was added as an amendment to the bill. And so the bill coming out of the House was actually a reversal of what happened in the previous year, where an entitlement was put into place. That entitlement still is in place. And then, like I said, it went to the Senate. They tried to add universal preschool. So by the end of the negotiations between the House and the Senate, that was taken out. Now, there is still an entitlement, like I mentioned, and it is significantly more than the entitlement from the previous year, but it is quite limited compared to the scholarships that are available, the universal school choice that the bill provided. And I'm a proponent of this. It is incrementalism, if you will, to give both parents the opportunity to have some choice, as well as teachers. And that's one of the things I keep telling the educators in my community is that if there's more job opportunities out there, they can demand higher pay, at least for the good ones anyway. And so I really see it as an opportunity to improve education in Wyoming. It's not ideal, but it's a lot better than nothing at all.
No, I
and
agree
only
with you.
Government
Yeah.
education.
And, in principle, like, I like the idea. We're spending, $21,000, that was the number from last year, per student, and our test scores are in the crapper. And, I mean, they're not improving. Ken always says, oh, okay, so your test scores went up. So instead of 46% reading at proficiency, you're at 48. So you're still kind of the cream of the crap. I'm in favor of it in principle. I just didn't like the entitlement. Now, the question I had, John, and I'm glad you called in, is so with the Supreme Court striking down the scholarship fund, did they also strike down the entitlement, or is that thing still active?
So let's be clear. What the Supreme Court has done is simply not overturn the injunction. In other words, the scholarship monies were almost ready to be handed out. That was stopped by Judge Frolicker, and the Supreme Court said, yeah, we're going to let Frolickers stay in place where the money cannot go towards these scholarships for right now while we're making a decision. So no decision has been made to throw this out of court at this point. It is being appealed to the Supreme Court on its constitutional grounds. You mentioned the amendment, which forbids funds going to anything outside of the control of the state. Now, that amendment, as in many state constitutions, but it has been overturned in regards to funding education through sectarian schools, in other words, Christian schools or other religious schools. And that has happened in both Missouri and Montana, I believe, maybe even a few other states. So if nothing comes out of this decision other than getting the Blaine Amendment of the Wyoming Constitution pushed up to the United States Supreme Court where it can be overturned, I think that would be tremendous for education in Wyoming, because that has already been determined to be unconstitutional elsewhere. Pretty simple decision to say it's also unconstitutional in Wyoming. That's the argument that's being used. And you know what's interesting is something that you and I and Agent 29 really have some angst about, and that is this corporate welfare that goes on in Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've got monies going to economic development corporations and communities that are not under the complete control of the government, we can't even public records request their financials to determine how the money is flowing through them. So if that's the case, how does that work?
Exactly. And, we are so inconsistent, in different areas of the government, like you just said. We give money to, and it's being uncovered that there are hundreds of millions of dollars in, so-called affordable housing projects across the state. Those aren't under, absolute control of the state. There's private developers that are controlling those things. Hey, one more question I have for you, John. The 8.5% raise that you guys passed to, all teachers and staff in the last session, that school districts didn't, that there was only one school district that actually gave out that raise. I was just wondering if you could comment on that real quick, because I'm about to come out with another story that makes that look a lot worse than just them not giving a raise. But just give me your thoughts on that, if you would.
Yeah, I'd be glad to, and thank you for asking that question. The point really is that the actual income of teachers is determined at the local level, and often the administrators, in their control of those funds to divert them from something other than the classroom and teacher pay, they like to blame the legislature. So, to point out that the legislature has been giving raises, and, granted, our predecessors, the insiders, weren't doing a good job of keeping up with the costs of education. But when the Freedom Caucus got in charge, we said enough. We're going to obey the court decisions of the past and look at funding from that perspective before we start looking at funding from the ground up. And so, we met the requirements of the courts by giving that 8.5% raise. Education at this very moment is completely fully funded. And so those arguments to say the legislature isn't fully funding, well, at this very moment, it is. And so when administrators then take that fully funded education and determine how it's going to be spent with the approval of the school board, of course, which they virtually run themselves, they will determine whether teachers get a portion, all of it, or none of it. And here we see from your show, you've well illustrated the fact that there are many school districts across the state are not giving that full raise to the teachers. They're pumping it somewhere else other than the classroom, which, as far as I'm concerned, that's where kids get educated. And all these other expenditures, like you mentioned, 3 different, complete administrations in the Sheridan County area. I think most teachers, as they're sitting in their classrooms trying to educate kids, they often see what their administrations are doing, and they're disappointed. They're disappointed at the way the funds are flowing and how they're basically restricted from getting the job done.
Absolutely. And, the response to that episode I thought was pretty good. I was talking with, Ken talked to Representative Bratton, who, goes to a lot of these meetings. And she said, like, teachers across the state are just absolutely infuriated. And they have every right to be, because they're, the argument we hear is that we don't have enough money for teachers. Well, you guys work hard on a raise, which, by the way, was bigger, like came out of the Senate and the House bigger than the original idea to, I think it was, what was it, like 4.5% to begin with. And then what passed was 8.5%. And the bill specifically says raise.
Yeah, let me be clear about how it came out of the Joint Appropriations Committee. We funded it at a lower level coming out of there, knowing that, the floor would probably make some adjustments to it. But we put that 8.5% for teachers was in there.
Oh, okay. All right.
The other areas of employee funding, like administration, was less, because we've seen administration just explode. The money we're spending on administration has exploded over the last decade or two, and yet student counts are down, teacher salaries are down. So, yeah, we thought it was appropriate to do that. But in the end, we gave 8.5% to everyone, even the janitors.
Well, and if you, I think I've mentioned to you before that my mom is one of the head secretaries at a school in Buffalo, and she swears up and down that the school district tells them, "Oh, we don't have enough money for raises," and I actually had to send her a copy of the bill and say, "Look, Mom, it's right here. Your school board is lying to you." But there's so much, misinformation that's floating around from school districts, and it's time that they be held accountable, which is why I'm very, very happy that I get to bring them that next episode. I'm just waiting on some documents, but it's going to be good. So, John, what's happening coming up in the Appropriations Committee? I know you guys are meeting, so what do you got on schedule?
We are getting ready for the 26 and 27. The 27-28 budget that we will pass in this 26 session. That's a big deal. It's the first time conservatives have had a significant input on the original bill as it comes out of the Joint Appropriations Committee. We are committed to reducing spending and getting government growth under control. So we're gonna be working very hard in the months of December and January preparing for that, so that we can put out a good product. We're not anticipating a lot of help coming from the administration and the executive portion of our government. So, A lot of that work will fall on me and my colleagues in that committee to really put out a good product. That's why Agent 29 is currently a chairman of a subcommittee looking at one of the largest departments that the state government has, and that's the Department of Health, and really taking a ground-up look at that and what we're spending and what programs we're supporting, something that hasn't really been done for probably many decades.
Well, and I think that he had a great point in, I guess it was the first meeting, where he says, how we budget in Wyoming is we take what we spent last year, we add to it what we want to do, and what else we want to do, and then a little bit more. And so the budget just continues to grow, and you end up with programs that, probably nobody uses, that are duplicative. And it's just, it's just baseline budgeting. And, we've got to get away from that. I mean, I think the best thing that we could do is go to like cash-based budgeting, like Ken suggested. Start at zero. Here's the programs we want, and then you go from there. But that's going to take a radical change of thinking in both houses, the Senate and the House, to get to that. But I appreciate your guys' efforts. I think you guys are doing a bang-up job. So thanks.
Thank you for taking my call.
Yep. Have a good day, John. We'll be talking to you.
Bye-bye.
All right. If you want to be part of the show, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989. It's Open Line Friday on the program. And, whatever you want to talk about. If there's something on your mind that we're not covering, which no doubt and this is something that's, this week has been a lot of fun on the program just because there's so much happening in the news. We've had a lot of really cool interviews, and there's a lot going on in the world. So, I enjoy like every day that I get to talk to you on the program. But so where we left off before the chairman of appropriations called in was talking about Antifa and all of the funding that's happening around it. Now, I've got a video from it's from the Glenn Beck program, and he's talking to a businessman, the guy that owns Camping World, and it fits into here simply because there's, it's just another thing that the Trump administration is doing. So let me go ahead and play that for you. And we're going to do a little stop and start. This is the rabbit hole that I told you we're going to end up going down because they mentioned something in the video that is still being used against the Trump administration. Just so happens I have the sound bites to disprove it. It's one of those narratives that I know that you have heard. And if you are suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, I suggest that you take your medication or wrap your head in duct tape or whatever it is that you do, because I'm going to play the one that, it usually makes liberals' heads explode, and then I'm going to play you what Trump actually said. So let's start with that piece from Beck. It's kind of long, so we're going to do a stop and start of it, but here you go.
Marcus Lemonis, he is the executive chairman of Bed Bath & Beyond, and he's currently in some sort of a fight, if you will. I don't think he's fighting it. I think he's reacting like a gentleman and a businessman with his responses to Governor Newsom. But he's in this argument with Governor Newsom because he said yesterday, Bed Bath & Beyond just cannot do business in California anymore. It's just too expensive. It's just too overregulated and no longer makes sense for Bed Bath & Beyond. Welcome to the program, Marcus.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very good. I just want to point out before we go, because I think this is important to say, because you started yesterday saying this is not about politics. And I just want to point out that you're not a Trump supporter. In 2017, you came out, and I'm not going to go through it because you went back and forth and corrected and everything else. But, you criticized what Donald Trump said in Charlottesville when it was thought that he had said, hey, and the Nazis are pretty good too, which we now know because the full audio and video is out, and we can show that that's not what he was talking about at all.
Okay, all right, so we're going to stop right there. This is the little rabbit hole that I told you we were going to go down. But there's a lot of criticism of the Trump administration, and it does relate to Antifa, because this is like the genesis of their argument. And There's a protest planned. It may be this weekend here in Sheridan, but it's another one of these stupid no kings protests that Trump is a dictator, Trump is a Nazi, no kings, which interestingly enough, if we did have a king, these folks wouldn't be able to stand out on the out on the street or the interstate and protest. But a lot of it boils down to, a lot of their argument boils down to what Trump said in Charlottesville. Now, the piece that that the media uses over and over and over is completely taken out of context. So, like I said, if you are suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, which, by the way, I good job for listening to the show, but here's one that you can use against those people who are not listening to the show. So this is what the liberals say that Trump said while in Charlottesville. Listen to this, and then I'm going to play you what he actually said.
But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
Okay, so that's the piece that the liberal media uses. That is what Antifa and all of these Democrat Party protesters use. He said there's very fine people. He said those neo-Nazis were really good folks. Well, that's not exactly what he said. You see, this is why context is so important, my friends, because you have to understand what people are actually saying. And, you know, I get criticism all the time. Oh, you took him out of context. That's not what he really said. And my answer is always, really? Prove it. Prove how I took that person out of context, because I don't. You know, if there's a question about it, that's why on this show, you hear a lot of the sound bites I use are pretty long, because I want you to hear on both sides what they're saying. And so, you know, it's very clear that, you know, whatever is said isn't taken out of context. Even my favorite ones, like the Nancy case, we got to pass it's a good deal for Wyoming. We got to pass the bill to find out what's in it. All of that. So context is really important. But, you know, all of these No Kings protests that are happening across the state, which is kind of the Wyoming version of Antifa, though evidently the protesters are a little bit smarter in Wyoming. They know that most people pack guns here. So, you know, that whole burning the place down like they are in Portland, probably not a good idea here. But anyway, here is what Trump actually said. And like I said, this soundbite is kind of long, but it's important that you understand what he said. Here we go.
Putting what you're calling the alt-left and white supremacists on the same moral plane.
I'm not putting anybody on a moral plane. What I'm saying is this. You had a group on one side and you had a group on the other, and they came at each other with clubs, and it was vicious, and it was horrible, and it was a horrible thing to watch. But there is another side. There was a group on this side, you can call them the left, or you've just called them the left, that came violently attacking the other group. So you can say what you want, but that's the way it is.
From both sides, too? You said there was hatred, there was violence on both sides.
Well, I do think there's blame. Yes, I think there's blame on both sides. You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either. And if you reported it accurately, you would say.
Neo-Nazis started this. They showed up in Charlottesville to protest.
Excuse me, they didn't put themselves down as neo, and you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
Okay, there's what they
You
always
had people
grab a
in
hold
that
of.
group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. George Washington was a slave owner. Was George Washington a slave owner? So will George Washington now lose his status? Are we going to take down, are we going to take down statues to George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of Thomas Jefferson? You like him?
I do.
Okay, good. Are we going to take down the statue? Because he was a major slave owner. Now we're going to take down his statue. So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally.
Okay, so there it is, right? That is what he said. But it is the media that took him out of context that has, and really, I mean, these radical left-wing groups, they were just waiting. That's what they do. They wait for an opportunity to, stage a protest. Well, we shouldn't even call it a protest. Stage a riot. and destroy buildings. You know, there's all sorts of different radical groups, even in Wyoming, that are just waiting for an opportunity. They don't really care what it is. And when the media came out with that soundbite, said, oh, there's very fine people on both sides, which completely taken out of context. Obviously, it's not what he said. It's those sorts of things that spark violence, because they use that, what the media said, and it gets reported over and over and over and over everywhere. And so that gets used. Hey, here's the reason why we're rioting. And, you know, it when you boil it all down, it ends up being taken out of context and and definitely, and in some cases, absolutely fabricated. So, I mean, that's really the genesis of a lot of this. And like I said, there's some great work being done by the Blaze about the funding of Antifa or whatever you want to call it. I encourage you to go read it. And it's really interesting because they got to have money coming from somewhere. And there are so many reports of pallets of bricks being delivered, and well, who's paying for those? There's signs that are nicely printed and they all look really pretty. Who paid for those? Where did those come from? Who's the money behind it? And that's what you have to do. And any of these groups that have a name to them, I tell you often that there's this website called Influence Watch. It's influencewatch.org. And you can look up any of these groups on their Code Pink or Antifa or any of them. And most of the time, you'll be able to find their funding sources and who these groups are linked with. And, admittedly, a lot of them go back to the same small group of people. The Center for American Progress, the Tides Foundation. Sometimes it's the Ford Foundation. It's one of the reasons why I'm kind of disappointed that I drive a Ford, though it's been a good car. Well, anyway, so funding of Antifa, and it's, do your research. Find out exactly who these people are. And, and this whole conversation was started by Claire McFarland in the Cow Pie, referring to the Wyoming Education Association, a teachers union, as a public school advocacy coalition. Whatever. Call it what it is. Words mean things.
2 + 2 is 4, not 5 if you want it to be 5. And this is not to be discriminatory. This is to stand up for language. Words mean things.
Yeah, exactly. Words do mean things. So I wish the Cow Pie would stop stirring all this stuff up, even so kind of inadvertently. Well, we're at the bottom of the hour, so let's go ahead and take our third break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the troops in Oregon. Turns out all lights are green. Let's get go time. Back in a minute. What everybody say? Nights gone away. Rocks now damn, nothing left to take. No one gets today. We got to see the truth. Nights far away. Tell me what you want. Here's what you got. You've been every day more than we have ever seen. Rocks now damn, don't ask why. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. This program is expanding at a rate that nobody could have thought possible. Now syndicated on the OBBM network. You can find that on Roku or on Apple TV and Amazon Fire, and there's a couple of other places. I'm really excited about this because you can watch Cowboy State Politics live on your TV without having to go to YouTube. And speaking of YouTube, you can watch the live program every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. And it's on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble. And don't forget about the Cowboy State Politics podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Those get published usually somewhere between 10 and noon. It depends on, Wednesday when I have the live show, and then to do the podcast, it's a little bit later. But every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. And coming up on tomorrow's edition of the podcast, I am going to talk about this whole business in Natrona County and how the principal at NCHS, Natrona County High School, Steve Harshman's base of operations, he wants to keep everything apolitical. What that really means is he wants to have his DEI group, his DEI student club, but not have an opposing argument. But it's already entirely left wing, which apparently Principal Wilson is also. But anyway, I'm going to talk about that tomorrow on the podcast, and then next week I'm going to be elk hunting. Well, I call it hunting, but really it's hanging out at the cabin most of the time. So we won't have any Cowboy State Politics live next week. And, even I deserve a break. And I've got an elk license that is ready to be used, and I just can't wait to do it. So no live program next week, though we will have the podcast Monday, and then Wednesday, and then Saturday. So anyway, that kind of gives you the schedule for next week. And so looking forward to it. Got to have a day off every once in a while, or elk hunting trip off. Does anybody know who this Zach Bryan idiot is? I don't know. The only reason I know that he's some sort of country music singer is he wrote a song that it's called Bad News. Yeah, and it kind of bashes ICE and totally left-wing, which, I guess if you get in those celebrity circles and all of your pals are a bunch of left-wing wackos, which is interesting that in country music there are a lot of lefties. It just seems incongruous to me that, most people from Wyoming are pretty conservative. So the legislature, that's a totally different subject, but most people that you run into, pretty conservative, down-home type people. A lot of people listen to country music, and, generally speaking, guys like Toby Keith and Alan Jackson and those guys, they just strike you as conservative folks. Not these new morons, Zach Bryan being one of them. And I quote from Fox News, country star Zach Bryan's new song about U.S. immigrations and custom enforcement is sparking a little bit of backlash across Nashville. Bryan previewed the song Bad News on Instagram this week, featuring lyrics that were a not-so-subtle dig at ICE and President Donald Trump. Quote, my friends are all degenerates, but they're all I've got. The generational story of dropping the plot. I heard the cop's name, Cocky MFer, aren't they? And ICE is going to come bust down your door, try to build a house. No one builds no more. And I got a telephone. Kids are all scared and all alone. Well, first of all, the lyrics are crappy. When did we start writing songs that just had terrible lyrics and that, don't really make any sense? I guess when folks like Zach Bryan came along. But he's receiving a little bit of backlash, and he perhaps should have, kind of reflected on his career choices before releasing this song, because it's not going to turn out so good for him here. Some fellow country artists said they could do without Brian's new politically charged single. Singer Buddy Brown, whoever the heck that is, began by taking jabs at Brian's past arrest and making parallels to country artists like the Chicks, formerly the Dixie Chicks, who paid the price for getting political after they publicly criticized George W. Bush ahead of the invasion of Iraq. Quote, he's getting harder for any true country fan to defend, country singer Buddy Brown told Fox News. First time I heard of him, he was getting arrested and mad because he was telling the cops how famous he is. Next, you see him jumping a fence to fight Gavin Adcock at a concert. He reminds me of a middle school desk, inked up and unstable. Now he's bashing President Trump and ICE, and the only thing I can think is he must be trying really hard for that Bud Light sponsorship. And that is exactly what's going to happen with him. While some on social media praised Brian, of course, the liberal lefties, for having his Bud Light moment, they're not all that self-reflective in thinking that what exactly happened to Bud Light. You see, the truth is that once, and they didn't even, the truth is, they just had some cans printed. And as far as I know, it wasn't an actual, sponsorship or whatever. But they just had cans printed and sent them to him. And then Dylan Mulvaney posted a picture in his drag clothes or whatever it is, him pretending to be a woman. And that's what did it. And Bud Light lost billions and billions and billions of dollars. Well, the same thing is going to happen to Zach Bryan, though it's probably not billions, it's probably millions. But he's going to pay the price of, not knowing who his audience is. And this brings up an interesting question, one that I went back and forth on social media with a couple of people over and over. But when it comes down to capitalism is not cancellation. You have to know your audience, know who they are. And, when you stray from that, well, your audience is going to go elsewhere. This is a conservative program. If all of a sudden, I don't know, had a guest host on and they took this thing all the way to the far left, well, you'd probably stop watching. Well, of course, I'm not going to do that, which is why you don't hear guest hosts on this program very often, because, I'm kind of one of those guys who want to make sure that my program stays on the same message that it's as conservative as I am, which is somewhere to the right of Attila the Hun. But Zach Bryan, yeah, he's going to feel it. So let's talk about this capitalism versus cancellation thing. It's not. You've got to let the free market operate. And when you are producing a good, or you are, a performer, or, in the news business or whatever, and you start doing stuff that's way outside of your audience, well, you're going to lose customers. And my friends, every single person that listens to this program, you are my customers. And so, it's not cancellation if you decide, hey, I'm going to stop listening to that guy, or I'm going to stop paying attention, or I'm not going to buy the songs from Zach Bryan. That's not cancellation. That's capitalism. And they're two different things. Capitalism, it's the free market, baby. When you have a good product and you're doing a good job and your audience likes it, well, then they're going to pay attention more. And the reverse is true also. If you produce a crappy product, people aren't going to buy it. The best products rise to the top. The crappy products go to the bottom, which is why this program is so as successful as it is. It's not cancellation. It's not any of that. So let's add on there this Jimmy Kimmel business. I guess that's all solved. He's back on the air. His ratings are back down in the toilet, by the way, which tells you that he didn't know his audience either. How that thing started, it wasn't Disney. Disney's a radical left company. And it wasn't Nexstar. It was their local TV stations that said, hey, you know what? We don't want this guy on our station, on our air. And so we're not going to do it. And so it went from the bottom up. And then finally Disney said, all right, we're going to give this guy a break. They've since backtracked, but the free market is working in that case. Jimmy Kimmel's ratings are in the toilet, and Disney is going to continue to lose millions of dollars on him. That's capitalism. That's not cancellation. It's the free market. Those are two entirely different things. And when you try to make the argument, oh well, they're infringing on his free speech. No, they're not. No. Jimmy Kimmel always had the freedom of speech. He could say whatever he wanted. He just didn't have a right to a television show. And the same holds true for everything. You have the right to say whatever you want, but you don't have the right to equal results. Let me give you another example. I'm a big fan of Harley Davidson, as you all know. But Harley had a CEO, and they went a little woke. Started producing electric motorcycles, and they even went so far as to try to make them have the Harley sound. An electric motorcycle that sounds like a big bad V-twin. I mean, just absolutely ridiculous. He was engaging in DEI, and guess what happened to their sales? Bloop, down into the toilet. Well, now Harley has reversed course. They fired that CEO. They got a new one. I don't know what's going to happen with that guy. Hopefully he's not a DEI, apostle or whatever. That's the wrong word to use. DEI follower. That's a better word. But we'll see. And the same held true for like Tractor Supply and John Deere. And there were a whole bunch of other companies that felt the wrath of the free market. Nobody was infringing on their free speech. They could be as left-wing as they wanted to. It was the free market that dictated their actions. You know, I always go back to my one of my favorite quotations from Michael Jordan. You know, after he was done playing basketball, he always did sell shoes, but, you know, a reporter once asked, hey, Mr. Jordan, we don't hear you talk about politics very often. You know, why is that? And he said, and he kind of laughed, and he said, because even Republicans have to buy shoes. And that is all he ever said about it. A personal example, when my parents owned the sporting goods store Alabama's in Buffalo, my dad always said that he is a member of the political party, whichever one my customer belongs to. That's it. It's about business. It's not about politics. And when you inject politics into it, you better hope that you are in line with your constituency, because if you're not, you're not going to be in the free market very often or much longer. Anyway, so an appeals court has ruled on the, injunction against the Trump administration for Oregon, against Donald Trump sending troops there. This is from justthenews.com. A federal appeals court on Wednesday restored President Donald Trump's control over the Oregon National Guard, but did not immediately overturn a ruling that blocks its deployment. Quote, a federal judge in Oregon has blocked the Trump administration twice so far from deploying National Guard troops in Portland amid heavy protests. The troops would have protected an ICE facility where protesters had clashed with agents. The appeals court placed an administrative stay on U.S. District Judge Karen Immergut's ruling about the federalization of the Oregon National Guard, while the court weighs the administration's case. The effect of granting an administrative stay preserves the status quo in which the National Guard members have been federalized but not deployed, the three judges on the panel wrote, according to The Hill. The court is expected to hear arguments Thursday on whether to pause Immergut's order until a final decision on the administration's appeal is made. They're going to win that one because that court, I don't know how they have jurisdiction. But second, this is a pretty clear case. It should be overturned by the appeals court. The Trump administration has attempted to send Oregon National Guard troops and California National Guard troops to Portland to help with the protests. Her ruling on Sunday blocked all National Guard deployments to Portland because apparently they like their buildings being burned down. It is the president's responsibility and I would say duty to create law and order, to maintain law and order. And it's, they have to protect federal buildings. And if that requires the National Guard to do so, that's within the president's purview. This is a similar conversation to what I was talking about yesterday with the so-called Defend the Guard Act. It was seductive in the very beginning, but I don't think that it's constitutional. The National Guard gets sent all over the place. And they can be federalized by the president. They are part of the U.S. Armed Services. So it's, I don't think that's a good idea either. So in Virginia, there have already been 300,000 early votes, people who went to the polls early. And, in lots of states, there is early voting. Excuse me for a minute. Coffee. That's one of the things I love about being at home in my studio. I've got my coffee pot right here, and it's, within arm's reach. Anyway, so early voting. Lots of states have a significant amount of time where you can vote before Election Day. In Wyoming, it was 45 days, and then it got shortened up a little bit. In Virginia, they have a lot of early voting, and there's over 300,000 people that have voted before Election Day. Now, here's the problem. Right? If you vote early and something happens that you find out, something else about the candidate that you don't like, well, you're kind of stuck with it. It's not like you can go to the clerk's office and say, hey, give me my ballot back. It doesn't work that way. Once you vote, that's it. And the second thing is that the longer the early voting period is, the more people vote, and the more you may get some really wacky election results. Plus, we have Election Day for a reason, and it's a federal law that you have to be paid while you go vote. It's not the whole day. I think it's an hour or two, whatever it is. But your employer has to give you time off work, and they have to pay you for doing that. So I'm in favor of just making Election Day a national holiday and be done with it. That way you don't have to go to work, and everybody can go vote on Election Day. From the Federalist, and I quote, now, the scandal whereby Jay Jones, the Democrat nominee in Virginia for the Virginia Attorney General race, sent graphic text messages. I talked about these yesterday. The Republican deserves 2 bullets. Those text messages describing his desire to assassinate a political opponent says much about our current political culture. Beyond how some describe violent policies to justify violent actions against their adversaries. It also reflects the practical realities of the way the states administer elections. The candidates at the top of Virginia's Democrat ticket, gubernatorial nominee Abigail Spanberger, which I didn't print that article out, but apparently there was quite the debate last night, and Spanberger did not do so good, and Lieutenant Governor nominee Ghazala Hashmi, have, as of this writing, refused to demand that Jones remove himself from the ticket. One potential reason for their reluctance to do the obvious right thing, it would disenfranchise tens of thousands of Virginia voters. On a practical and quite cynical level, Virginia Democrats might worry that calling for Jones to drop out would guarantee an electoral loss, as it should be. The guy's talking about killing his political opponents. He doesn't deserve to be the attorney general. He doesn't possess the qualifications to be the chief law enforcement officer in Virginia. In September of 1995, Mitch McConnell served as the chairman of the Senate. 95. Holy cow. 30 years ago. The Senate Ethics Committee that unanimously recommended the expulsion of Bob Packwood of Oregon. The next day, Packwood resigned. A Democrat, Ron Wyden, won a special election to replace Packwood and has remained in the Senate for going on 3 decades. In acting to give Packwood the boot, McConnell and the Republican majority cost their party a Senate seat for decades. But some principles are more important than raw politics. In reality, lawmakers should have expelled Packwood from the Senate for his lecherous behavior years, if not decades, before they finally did. Likewise, the Commonwealth of Virginia should not have as its chief law enforcement officer someone who talks in graphic detail about killing a member of another political party. Now, as I said, this relates a lot to early voting. Most Virginians had already voted before the news of Jones's homicidal text became public, meaning that if Jones drops out now, anyone who voted with him for him would be effectively disenfranchised. As of October 2nd, the day before the Jones scandal surfaced, roughly 300,000 people had voted in the Commonwealth. While Virginia does not register voters by party, making it more difficult to know which parties the candidates the early vote favors, it seems reasonable to say that Jones had received more than 100,000 votes. He could have received tens of thousands of votes more than that, especially, one, given that the tens of thousands of people who voted on October 3rd at least some percentage of whom knew nothing about his text, and 2, the individuals who mailed their ballots before the scandal broke, even if the ballots were not processed by the Board of Elections until after October 3rd. If Jones drops out, all those votes get vaporized. People's ballots for Attorney General will become meaningless if the Democrat nominee withdraws. Now, just think about it. Think about this for a second, because this is an argument that comes up in Wyoming a lot. If you're a Democrat and you claim you're, quote, fighting to save democracy, do you really want to have to tell more than 100,000 Virginians that their votes don't matter? Because, one, he has violent fantasies. Two, the party didn't adequately vet its attorney general nominee. And three, elected Democrats successfully campaigned for months and months for perpetual voting. It's not a good look. Mind you, I don't think that it justifies keeping Jones on the ballot. But I think the larger question here, yeah, it's a problem with this Jones character that says he wants to kill his political opponents. But I think the larger question is about early voting, that it ends up disenfranchising a lot of people. Now, it doesn't happen all that often that you have, in Wyoming anyway, that you have a major candidate drop out of the race. Sometimes this happens. It happens a lot more often at the city and county level. But, people who early vote, well, your vote gets vaporized. And, the other thing about it, too, is this is a political calculation on behalf of Democrats and redcoats, because they know that the longer they extend early voting, the more likely it is that voters will go to the poll. And the earlier that you can make it means that anything that comes up in the campaign afterwards, those votes are already in there. And the voter doesn't get to change their mind. There's no reason at all that we can't have just vote on election day. Now, of course, the opposite argument to that is, well, it's going to disenfranchise a lot of people. A lot of people can't vote. Well, you still can have absentee voting. If somebody's knows they're going to be on vacation, or they just can't make it on that particular day, you can always request an absentee ballot. But that doesn't justify having months and months and months of early voting. That's just a ploy by liberals to insulate themselves from what happens in an election. And the truth is, there are a lot of really easy fixes to our election. See, I have no problem with hand counting, though I think that the way that people are being trained, and I've watched some of these trainings and watched some of their demonstrations of hand counting, I think it's overly burdensome. I don't know why it takes so long. Before we had tabulation machines, people always voted on ballots, and we counted them, and you had the results that day or the next morning. I don't understand what the big problem is, why we actually have to have, electronic voting, there's only one county in Wyoming that has electronic voting. We need to get rid of that. Paper ballots, my friends, pen and paper ballots. But there's no reason why we can't have paper ballots and hand counting. We did it before. And the population of Wyoming really hasn't ballooned since that time. There are many, many counties in Wyoming that the population really hasn't changed all that much. Sure, it fluctuates 100 here or 100 there, but in reality, when you're counting ballots, that really doesn't matter that much. But a lot of the objections to some of these electoral fixes really are just attempts to favor the more liberal candidate. Because, when stuff comes out, election controversies come out, well, then people have already voted. And that is the motivation behind all of this early voting. Fortunately, in Wyoming, and thanks very much to Secretary of State Chuck Gray and the conservatives in the House of Representatives, we've been able to push a lot of really important election fixes, tweaks to our election system to make them more secure. And absolutely, we should, because, that's the one duty you have as a citizen. Well, jury duty also. So one of two duties, I guess. But that's the only time that you actually get a say in your government, is who your elected leaders are going to be, or your elected representatives. Representatives is a better word, because just because you're elected doesn't necessarily mean that you're a leader. But that's like the only time. It is the only time that you have a chance to make a difference, to choose the candidate that you want to represent you. And it is Democrats and redcoats that continually try to frustrate this. And if you need no more evidence than to look at the behavior of the Wyoming Senate in the last session, there were a lot of election integrity measures that met their doom in the drawer of Bo Bite Me Biteman and Slithers Nethercott. There was a lot. They passed a few of them. That's true. But there was a lot more that just went straight in the drawer, and they were never heard from since. In this upcoming election, my friends, the number one job, well, I guess we got two big jobs, but one of them is to keep the House, and the second one is to flip the Senate, to get rid of a lot of these redcoats, and several of them are in leadership right now. They need to go down the road my friends. They're not conservatives. They don't act in your best interest, nor have they ever. And, the folks that I'm referring to, they're the folks that are running the Senate right now. And if you look at their voting records over the last 10 years or however long they've been in there, I bet the average amount of times that they vote with the Democrats is 80 to 85%. And I mean, that's just the facts, my friends. But I bet if you look it up, that's what you would find. Well, we've burned up another busy broadcast. 2 hours on the program. Went by like I was standing still or sitting still. A fun program. Thank you for listening, my friends. I really appreciate it. Again, let me just run down the schedule for you for next week. We won't have Cowboy State Politics live next week. I've got to go hunting with dear old Dad, and it's been waiting for this one. We couldn't do it this week because of a lot of different things. The Reagan Day dinner that's tomorrow night. By the way, if you don't have tickets to that, I think that there's still some available. You can contact the Sheridan GOP, and they can hook you up with a ticket. And there might be some available at the door. There almost always is. So that's tomorrow at the Ramada Inn. I think the festivities get going. The dinner starts at 6, and then I think the cocktail hour or whatever is at 5. But anyway, that'll do it. Podcast, we'll still have a podcast next week, Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, my friends, at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming, I'm David Iverson, and this is the Cowboy State Politics Live Show. Have a good weekend, my friends. I will think of you while I'm hunting.